food will not be able to get food from the sea where we live. So that's the background of where we are. So my husband and I have stored and preserved food for many years. So we're going to just basically, I've got some things to share with you. What we need to do as we come together and talk about this topic is we need to change some of the things that I say into a Philippines context. Okay, so that what I share with you works for you. Not that I bring New Zealand ideas and say, oh, this will work here. For a start, you eat differently to what we do. So when we talk about putting aside food, preserving food, storing food, question, what food? Rice. Okay, in this country, rice.
Rice are number one.
I don't come and talk to you about wheat. Okay? In America, if you are talking about food storage, they'll talk about wheat all the time. Because they're bread bakers. Right? That's what they would call you, say bread is the staff of life. So they store wheat. We don't store wheat at home because we don't eat much wheat. We store rice. The same as you do, because my husband loves to eat rice. If you store rice properly, I'm wearing black and I'm going to get covered in chalk as I walk backwards and forwards. If you store rice properly, how long will it last for? 30 years. 30 years. You store it properly. Now, what are the rules for proper food storage? What are the rules? What do you have to think about? This is your staple dietary thing here. Some of you eat rice 3 times a day. So you're talking, when I speak today, I don't want you to think about what we've heard about since the 1914. I don't want you to think about a year's supply of food. I don't want you to think about that. Okay? Because you have to start somewhere, and it's not by thinking about a year's supply. To store a year's supply of food, you're going to need a place about as big as this room. Now, I've been to some of your homes, and you don't have that luxury. You don't have this amount of space to dedicate to massive food storage. So where do you start? You start with a week. If you could store things enough that for a whole week you would never need to go to the shop, you're well on the way. And when you get there, you grow it. But first you get there. Okay? So, when you think about storing rice, what are the rules? What do you need to do? Okay, the right kind of container. Now, here's where you've got to think about living in the Philippines. When you store food, what are you trying to protect it from? Okay, moisture. You live in a very humid insects. What, particularly in your country, what insects? Cockroaches and ants. Has it got legs?
I don't know the right on English of that book, but that number one.
Rice worm. Okay, I don't know what that looks like, and I hope I don't find out. In rice that we have, it will contain this animal here. Maybe next time I'll bring a picture. This is an insect with 6 legs and a long nose. It exists in grain. Okay? So the eggs, even if you don't see the weevil or any of these other things, this thing here, the eggs will be in the grain. Okay? Yeah, and you don't see it. But if you store that grain without thinking about the possibility that that insect is in it, you will lose your food storage. Okay? So,
Sister, then we will rice.
there we go. So we will. This is what we put in our rice. And chewing gum, this one. Okay? Yeah.
The other type,
Well,
the compressed one, there's a coating.
not with sugar.
Ah, okay. Ah, okay.
So you get that and you just push it in the rice, okay? That will stop the insects from hatching.
Double bend yan.
It will look after the whole thing.
Para sa ito yung pagbiyahe.
If you're storing your rice in a
Oh, Christian.
I've seen a lot of empty paint buckets being used for all kinds of things since I've been here. You can get an empty paint bucket and clean it with its lid, put your rice in. Now let me tell you about that, is too heavy to carry for evacuation. But for your permanent home storage, at your home, perfect. The thing that's not up here that you really have to protect against are these. Because the thing about rats is they must chew all the time. And they will chew through plastic. So you've got to watch, okay, but these are thick. And it's a very hungry rat that'll chew through that bucket. Yep.
Just put the part, put that here in the house. So that no-
I agree. I agree. If you have a good cat, that's amazing. A cat. I've noticed that there are a lot of dogs here, and I thought maybe they're useful for killing rats, but actually they seem to be useless. But if you've got a good cat, right, terriers will kill rats. But if you've got a good cat, and then this.
How many pieces?
Right, so in here, I would push 3 into a bucket this big. If I was storing my rice in just a normal 2-litre empty 2-litre juice bottle, I would put 1 in. And we just push it in the top. Yeah, just shove it in the top. Put your rice in, shake it down, push that in, top it up, finish. Forget about it. You don't do it will stop anything that's living in there, it'll stop them from hatching. Okay, you put it in there. The other thing is, no, so good question. The other thing is, here, I found out at the bishop's house, you call them laurel leaves.
Laurel leaves.
We call them bay leaves. They must have the same chemical in them because they will do the same thing. Right, so you just put the dried leaves in the container and these insects will not hatch. Okay? Yeah. So, when you put your rice away, all you have to do is keep an eye on your container. That nothing's chewing the container, right? So you get a good container, fill it with rice, protect it, forget it. Because it will last for 30 years or more stored well. Okay? So, the other thing, so let's go back. Yeah.
So you mean to say we have two options preserving rice.
Yep.
Right? So we can use this But we don't have, kumore kita sa kadin eh, pwede ko na itong mga priority. And gamit na ito pag adobo, subok mo lang na ito, kumore ini. So, pwede kayo eh, pwede ini. So, ang hindi kita maharap ngayon na ang sigrito.
Any, what else would you store?
Fish, fish.
Fish. Okay, you love fish. How are you going to store it? Dried?
Dry under the sun.
Dried or
Put salt. Salt.
Yeah. Pero sister, it will not last long. Dried fish or dried.
in glass, if you basically do a light cooking of your fish, so cook it, okay, not raw, just give it a light cook, and then you preserve it in a salted brine, it will last for at least 2 years. If you've got it in a glass container, so when you, and this is something we can do as a workshop if the interest is there. Okay, so you have a jar, maybe you had some peanut butter in a jar, if you eat peanut butter, right? The best jar will have a metal lid, not plastic. A metal lid, okay? Now the reason is, when I put my fish, I should try to draw a fish. Here. When I put my fish in there, and I'm going to take the water that I cooked it in, the salted water, while it's still hot, I'm going to pour it in there with the fish, right? I'll have 3 or 4 fish in a jar, won't I? And when I pour in the brine, I fill it while it's hot, right to the top. Right to the top. And then I have my lid, which I have boiled on the stove. So the lid is hot. And I'll screw that lid on that jar. Now, for those of you who know physics, my jar is hot, my food is hot, my lid is hot. What happens as it cools down? What's history? What happens as it cools down? Do any of you ever buy jam from the shop? Jam in a jar? Yeah. So what happens when you go like this? It pops. What happens is you create a vacuum. As this cools down, so I put my liquid right to the top. When I put the lid on, there's no air in there. And that's the thing when we think about what do we need to protect our food from? Oxygen. Okay? It's oxygen that causes food to spoil. Right? So we fill it right to the top. We put on our hot lid. And when you put that on, you can imagine it's totally full of liquid. Put my lid on. A little bit spills down. That's okay. That means the whole jar is full. And as the lid gets cold, it shrinks. And it creates a vacuum in my jar. My fish will last at least 2 years. Kept in the dark. Okay? It needs to be, anything you store in clear containers needs to be kept in the dark.
I suppose it's part of preservative, but that's a good reminder when you go to buy a can or a jar from the shop. Make sure the lid is not popping up because it's no good.
If you store something that you bought from the shop, it's got a metal lid, that lid should have a dent in it. If it doesn't have a dent, don't buy it.
Malupok.
Yeah, because if it hasn't got a dent, it's been opened at some time. And it's lost, and now we've got air, and that thing won't last. But if you don't open it, it will last you for a long time. If I go to the shop, say I want to store jam. Now, we actually need to talk about survival first. But let's say I really love jam, and I want jam in my store cupboard. I can make it, but in New Zealand, where I'm from, it's not cheaper to make than it is to buy. And that's because of the cost of sugar and the cost of electricity. Okay? Here in the Philippines, so far, we have paid 30 New Zealand dollars a month for electricity. In New Zealand, we'll pay 300. Electricity is expensive in New Zealand, okay? So if I want jam, I know how to make it, but if I want it, I'll buy it. And the reason is, because it's made in a factory, it's guaranteed to be properly sealed. And it will have on it a date. Right? An expiry date. And that date might be June 2024. I put that jar in my store cupboard. If I don't open it, I keep it in the dark, I keep it cool, I can keep that jam for years. Way past this, way past. And I have opened jam that is years old, and it's as good as if I just bought it. But if you go past the expiry date, once you open it, you must use it fast. Because once it's open, it won't last as long. Is that clear? So kind of quickly dumping all this information on you. Yeah. So fish, if you want to have it, once you've dried it, again, I recommend you drop it into a glass jar. Okay? And put the lid on.
Water also, sister. You said already the new year.
Madi, pwede kaming ko niya din.
So, once it's dry, just put it in dry. It'll be fine. Yeah. Good, that's a good question. So that's a clarifying.
The jar must be sterilized. Yes. Kasi yun,
So what you
sterilized talaga.
just boil it.
Yes, boil.
So that was an important question. The best way to preserve the nutrients in food, one of the best ways to store it is dry. Okay, that's one of the best ways. But to eat dried food, except for your fish which you fry and make it beautiful and crispy, to eat a lot of dried food you have to have the water to do what we call rehydrating, bringing it back. So don't store too much dried food if you don't have enough water to do what you want to do with it. Yeah. See where I'm going with that one, brothers and sisters? But you dry food, drop it in the jars dry. And the jars themselves have to be absolutely dry. Okay? If you've sterilized it by boiling, if you are fortunate enough to have an oven, you just bake it in the oven for a while till it's hot. Okay? Absolutely clean. Cool it, put your food in, done. Okay. So, but we can have workshops on this. Today we just want to do the basics. Alright, so What else are we going to store?
Meat, sister.
Meat. Okay, now here is where you need to be careful. If you know how to salt it, good. But that means everything you eat is salted. If that's good for you, great. Okay? We store meat in cans. Okay? So, again, you can dry meat. I've noticed here in the Philippines that you eat a lot of minced pork. You can dry that and store it in a jar. And it will last a long time, many years, okay? As long as it's protected. We eat meat, like for example, we eat a lot of tinned fish. We eat mackerel, we eat tuna, we eat corned beef. When we buy a tin, it's got to have no damage on it. So if the shop has dropped the tin and it's got any kind of dent in it, don't buy it. You can buy it to eat quickly, but don't buy it for your store cupboard. Any container that goes into your store cupboard needs to be in perfect condition. Okay? So think about how you want to do that. It can be dried, it can be salted, you can buy it already processed. That's very safe. Can't really go wrong with that.
What's wrong with the bacon?
Oh. So the risk with a tin that is damaged, the risk is that if you look at a can, they've got a lip here, and they've got a lip here, and they've got a seam where the can is being folded, made, yeah? So all of these are points of weakness. Anywhere that the tin joins is a point of weakness. So if you buy a tin and say it's dented here, there's a risk that that seal has been broken. And you might not see it straight away with your eye, but air will go anywhere. Okay? And once air goes in there, your can will start to blow up.
Tin can.
Tin can.
So do you not buy
If it's got a dent in
Damo
it,
para damage pag travel, ano, pag deliver na sa sugar na yun.
right. So when I ask this question, this is a little thing to do with your families, is to sit down together and say, what do we eat? Because what we should be storing is what we eat.
Oh yes.
Okay?
Do not store food that only you can eat.
Exactly. And when we were first getting into food storage, my husband and I, and we, by the way, we have stored food right from the start of our marriage. That was just part of the way that we lived. Every time we would go once a week to get groceries, we would buy one or two things, only one or two things that were for the store cupboard, not to be eaten. And in that way we built it up. But one of the sisters in our ward was shifting, and she gave us, these tins are about this big and about this square. She gave us 10 tins of wheat. And we thought, oh wow, that's great. You know, we're following the Prophet's counsel, we're storing wheat. And then we went, well, what will we do with it? Because I don't bake bread. Okay? And when you have wheat, you have to grind it. And if you store wheat, you can't take your, particularly your children, you can't go, oh, well, we're having some hard times now. Oh, we'll go and eat the wheat. It's too hard on their bodies. If they're not used to eating it, you'll make them sick. There's too much fibre in it to suddenly say, oh, now we eat wheat. So you have to store what you eat. So your store cupboards will look different to mine. So you sit down as a family, what do we eat for breakfast? What would we eat for lunch? What do we eat for dinner? And then you plan what you're going to bring into your store cupboard.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
So in Philippines, it's hard for us to do that canned. And one, I have in mind about the vacuum seal. You know about it, sister? Is it okay, sister, ma'am? You can and sister, my one problem na experience ko, sister, is how to preserve flour.
Okay.
That's my problem. Kaya nagkakamay-dahin ko. And I have a lot of flour that have some worms.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, sister. Instead ng wheat, sister, we have flour in Philippines.
Flour,
Yes, sister.
it doesn't matter what country we're in, because of the way that flour is produced, it is full of moth eggs. Okay?
Binalik mo pa lang. Binili mo pa lang
Moths,
sa market.
that fly around at night, that's your gecko's eat for you. Moths. Milled flour is full of moth eggs. Again, you can't see them, but every time you eat flour, you're eating moth eggs. Okay? If you don't protect your flour, you put it in your store cupboard, you come back to it 5 or 6 months later or less, you will look inside the bag and it will be full of dead moths. Or if it's stored in a paper bag, the bag will be full of holes because the moths have hatched and they've dug their way out of your flour. And now you open your flour and it's full of stuff that looks like cobwebs, where the moths have fluttered around in your flour. So what do? You find a friend. If you haven't got one, flour must be frozen first.
Frozen.
4 days. Okay? Wrap it up if it's in paper. In the Philippines, do they give you flour? It's in plastic, so that's okay. In New Zealand, all of our flour is sold in paper bags. So we have to wrap ours in plastic first. Then you put it in a freezer, it's got to stay there for 4 days. That will kill the moth eggs and larvae. And your flour will last you, where'd she go? Your flour will last for a very long time.
Frozen for
But
4 days.
remember, whenever you're storing, you're thinking about what would put this thing at risk. Right? So, find somebody with a freezer, if you don't have one, put it away for 4 days, take it out, put it in a bucket, forget about it. Is that helpful?
Yeah. Thank you so
Will
much.
last for a long time. And all you do is
Naka-press on daw na siya.
put the dates on it.
Frozen lang tapos malaki. Okay.
How to preserve beans?
Frozen and then
Bean, dry them or
Dry.
dry.
Dry beans.
Dry beans, here in the Philippines, you get a lot of sun.
Yes, sir.
So, you don't need a thing. At home we use a machine called a dehydrator. We cut our vegetables, put them on the trays, turn it on overnight, get up in the morning, put it into plastic, finished.
So what I mean, the seed beans.
beans like the mongoose also.
Oh,
Red beans, red beans.
are you
Not the
growing them?
vegetable.
Are
No,
you
not the vegetable.
You buy them?
The seeds,
You
the
buy,
seeds.
yeah,
Seed, we eat that.
yeah, you got to store it dry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So all you need to do is that. In fact, I would do the same thing.
Same thing.
I was
So pwede ka na mag-store mo ng beans bago hanggang parang bugas.
Ano get it
Like
called?
the rice.
Glowing beans.
Anything dry, like the rice.
Same as pasta.
What about sister with the flour? Is it the same with this pasta?
Pasta has already been cooked.
So how are we going to
Yeah, all you need to do for long life is put it in a bucket. Leave it in its container that you bought it in and put it in a bucket. Pasta like I've seen
Spaghetti.
elbows, macaroni, over 20 years. If it's hard pasta, can you get fresh pasta here? That's soft, only hard. Okay, don't worry about the expiration date. So if you're worried about what I'm saying there, brothers and sisters, the expiry date is protection for the people who make the food. Okay? Do you understand what I mean by that? So that means that supermarkets don't keep it on their shelves too long and things like that. It's protection for the manufacturer, not for you. So if you've got pasta and it's hard and dry, you can store it for well over 20 years. And I'm not, when I say pasta, I do not mean noodles. Noodles, their shelf life is much shorter. They will go stale. Okay, so you can, if you're storing something like a 2-minute noodle, you want to be rotating that quite regularly. So every time you eat one, you put another one back in. Okay? 2-minute noodles will go stale even in their packets because they're made with egg, right? And because many of them are not, many noodles are not completely dry. They go stale. Okay? So put them in, but rotate. And the other thing I would do, I took my bucket off. Again, I love buckets. If you came in, walked into my store cupboard, you go, what are all these buckets? I will buy pasta, macaroni, buy it, leave it in its bag that it came in, and drop it in the bucket, put the lid on. Forget it. I will come back to that pasta and use it 5, 6, 7 years in the future. It's as good as the day I put it in there. Keep it dark, keep it cool, keep it dry, okay? And you'll be fine. So anytime you see a painter or a builder and they're getting rid of their buckets with lids, grab those and give them a good clean up. Recycle, reuse. I have some handouts here for you. I'm just looking at the time. I need to stop very soon. The other thing that, are there any more questions before I stop today?
What is the difference between restoring foods in a cool and dark place rather than like just placing it in at the side of the cabinet?
Okay, good question. The fastest way for food to break down is to be exposed to light. Okay? So darkness is very important and temperature because I don't know if you've had the experience of reheating food more than once, and every time you reheat it, you realise that the quality is worse and worse. You had that? Yeah. So heat will cause your food to spoil fast. Okay? It's like you've started cooking it. So you want to keep it cool and you want to keep it dark. So when you're looking around your home, where shall we put our food storage? Put it under things if you can. Right? If your bed is a raised bed, you know some people have beds that sit on the floor, but some people have them off the floor. Push your food storage under there, where nobody can see it, and only you know it's there. Because the other thing you need to think about is security. We absolutely want to think the best of people. Okay? We totally want to think the best of people, but I can tell you that in a disaster, people will do things that you would not normally expect them to do, especially when they're hungry. Okay? And don't talk to your neighbours about your food storage. Don't talk about it. Now, when disaster comes, maybe you'll have enough to share, but maybe you won't. And the people that you have to save first are your family. Okay? In a disaster, you only share if you can. Okay? You don't open your store cupboard and say to your neighbours, come on in, because that's going to last 1 year. And tomorrow you'll have nothing, and they have nothing to give you. So put it out of sight. Okay? The reason I say try not to put it up is because heat rises. So the higher your food storage, the shorter its life, because that's where the heat sits. But at the floor and in the dark, it will last for a very long time. Okay? And as I say, we're only working on trying to start off one thing at a time, one item at a time, that we get and put away, and it's not going to be used that week. We just put it away. One step at a time. Okay, this is like, you know, you've got an elephant and you've got to eat that elephant. It's not going to happen in a day. One bite at a time will do the job. So don't rush this, but start it if you haven't started, okay? Keep going. This is the important thing. So you want to think about this. So when we think about where we locate it, we're thinking about, is it in the way? Who's that we have it? Is it safe? And you want to keep it out of the light. Especially if I just, I knew I was going to get covered in chalk dust. I brought with me, it's nothing interesting. When you're storing your water, put it in coloured bottles if you can, because of the light. Now, it is nearly impossible to spoil water. Okay? Virtually nothing can go wrong.
How about if you paint the bottle?
On the outside?
Yeah.
You could do that. Anything that blocks the light. Yeah. These bottles are good quality for storage. This plastic, okay? It will last a long time. It does not break down, and that's one of the reasons that environmentalists hate them, right? They don't break down easily. And you can store your water for years. But to do that, there's a lot of tricks you can do with water. We can talk about it another time. I'm looking at the clock here. You need just plain bleach. You need that in your store cupboard. You need it in your water.
Windows.
So for a bottle this size, you would just put, well, what we do is we just tip the bleach, a little bit of bleach in there, we swish it around, tip it out, and now we put our water in. Enough has stayed in there to keep the water clean. That's fine. That's fine.
Don't need to put
If you've got your filtered water and you're confident in it, you don't need that. But I always have this in my store cupboard in case. So in our house, we have a space under the house where we store our water. Every time we empty a drink bottle, we'll just fill it up and we'll chuck it underneath the house. If something happened to that, I might go back to that one day and it might be green. And some people would look at that and go, oh, that's no good. But if I put this in, I can use that. So that's for cleaning. So if you've got filtered water and you're storing it, fine. But always keep that on. When you open your water, you want to have, there's a couple of things you can do to make sure it's fresh. You have another bottle or a jug here, you'll put that in there, and you put that in there, and you put that in there, and you just do that 4 or 5 times. That aerates the water and makes it fresh. That's really good. The other thing you can do is boil it. You all know about the benefits of boiling. Okay? If you are in a disaster, you may not have a heat source. So you need to know how to clean it without using heat. So then
The rings, sister, do we need the rings after using the rim rock?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, rings first,
No,
then
no,
put
no,
the
no,
water.
no.
Immediately.
And just make sure that it's an unscented, ordinary bleach. Because I've looked at the shelves here in the Philippines, and you've got a huge range of bleaches, and some of them are perfume. Don't go there. Yeah, just any bleach, as long as it's plain. No scent, no scent.
Because no free.
No ways to drink reserve water.
Aerate it.
And then,
The reason I've seen that a lot of you use the big bottles, if you're evacuating, that's to take one of those big bottles with you, it's heavy. But if you're evacuating your family, you want something that a child can carry as well. This here, I love cable ties. Cable ties are your best friend. Because what you can do with the cable ties is put a handle on it. Right? And then the child can carry it full of water. So when they need to evacuate, they can take their own water source with them. Okay, so what we brought was, I've got 10 minutes, 72-hour pack. We brought a church one. I've got some information on 72-hour packs. And I'm very happy at some point, if you're interested, to do a demonstration we have, which is on packing a survival kit, 72-hour survival kit into a bottle. Okay, so you pack first aid supplies, you pack some emergency support stuff, you pack 3 days worth of food into a 3-liter drink bottle. And that is light enough for every member of your family, no matter how old. If your child is 2, they can carry it. But that will keep them alive for 72 hours. So that's something that, if you're interested, you can do that another time. I've got some information on it for you today. I'd be happy for you to look at the information, which on this handout is the back page, because we're going to need to make some adjustment to suit the Philippine diet and palate and what's available. Okay, think about it for 2 years. It's there. And if the siren goes and you have to evacuate, every member of the family picks up their survival kit, picks up some water, and off you go. Okay? So that's discussion for another day. But in the church one, you can get these, your bishop can get these with all the ward. Filters. Okay? It's a water filter supplied by the church. The other thing that's in here are basic first aid supplies. It's good for everybody to have something of their own. If you have a baby in your extended family, steal away 5 or 6 of that baby's disposable nappies. They are great bandages for big injuries. Put them in your survival kit. Don't tell the mother of the child, right? Get some disposable nappies, because if you've got a big bleed, you wrap that tightly around there, that will absorb blood. So that's that. And then the other thing that they put in here is some very basic health and hygiene supplies. There's a flashlight here. Okay. The candles are a good thing to have in your store cupboard, but not recommended. Okay? Not recommended. Can you guess why? It's fire, right? It's a risk. Fire. So anytime there's fire involved, there's a risk. So if you have this particular torch here, is what we call a dynamo action. You squeeze it to make it go. So it doesn't need batteries. And you can also, you should all, if you don't have in your home, you should have a if I say transistor radio, do you know what I mean? Yeah, just a small battery operated radio. because that's how your emergency services will communicate. Okay? And they have that, and then the other thing that they have is this ghastly
Hindi
stuff.
na unta manghuli.
Right? Now that's pure survival food. That is not enjoying life at all. Okay, that's just to get you to stay alive. But that's a dehydrated ration pack, similar to what your army probably needs. Okay? You can do better than that, but that'll keep you alive. So, that's the only thing. These are like, they're like a protein biscuit. Yeah, because these are, the kids are supplied from the States, but you can get this dry food here in All right, so, just to conclude, I have this if you're interested. This is your beginning, I guess, to the 72-hour pack. Now here is the basic information that a family should have. My recommendation is the adults in the family are stronger. Their kids should be bigger. Okay? You can, it depends on what you can get access to. But you know the shopping carts that people have with two little wheels on? And you pull them along, put your shopping in? Those are good for evacuation because you don't have to lift them. Anything with wheels is great. Okay? If you're giving your child a backpack for evacuation, make sure they can carry it. There's no point giving them a backpack that's too heavy. Okay? Because you're going to end up carrying it. And you've already, parents who've got it. So explain some of those things. Then a little bit about what we've talked about with the food on the next 2 pages. And then on the final page, the little activity I mentioned, if you're interested, we'll do it sometime. Survival kit and a novel. All right, so thank you. Really appreciate your interest. If I can help in any way, let me know. But let's hand these out. Please feel free to take one if you wish. Any questions before we finish?
Sir Lisa.
Like a protein biscuit.
Huh? Sister. Nakaprepare ka.
So it's made with milk products and I don't know if you can see they're little flat things. Yeah, and but they're full of, they've got calories, protein, so it's just an energy thing to sustain life. Very boring, but yeah, it'll keep you alive.
How much is this?
The tube. You have, yeah.
Picture daw iday kay para
It wouldn't be the same packaging.
ihataga ako ni Kami. Picture daw iday kay dikit maram nito. Bakit para ako ng glucose.
Mainly milk products actually.
Milk?
Yeah, but it's hard. It's like a milk biscuit.
Yes, a little bowl.
And it's just like a tackle,
You have here in the Philippines?
Yes, you will have. Yeah.
Where did you get this?
Oh, this one came with the church supplies.
Cheese in it, cheese in it.
Imported yan, imported.
Dapat ko lang yung grocery.
Mo ba yan ito ka-important? Sige na yan.